Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
It's just us today, Anton. We had a guest scheduled and they weren't able to make it, so we are going to have to have them on for another movie at another time, maybe another Star Wars film.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to have to make do.
Well, make do we shall with a different Star Wars film.
Yes, I was going to say kind of making do the way they made do with this film, which is technically a film, but we'll talk about the ins and outs of that.
Yeah, because it serves a different purpose.
Yeah, it does serve a different purpose. You know, I'm really curious where this discussion's going to go.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything recently, Anton? Any new films that you'd want to discuss?
Any new films? I mean, at the time of this recording, it's the week of the release of Captain America. We'll see how history looks at this movie.
It's not getting good reviews so far.
So far,
not really surprising. You know what I saw a trailer for the other day? This new Soderbergh movie. It's a spy movie called Black Bag. Have you seen this?
I have not, but already I'm intrigued.
It's a really good cast.
Ensemble cast, I'm guessing?
Yes, I'm going to read it to you. For also written by David Koepp.
Okay.
It's got our friend Michael Glassblower.
Is George Clooney in it?
No.
Oh.
No. Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, they play a married couple who work for MI6.
Okay.
And we've also got Naomi Harris and Pierce Brosnan in it. I'm intrigued by this, though. A Soderbergh spy film.
Yeah. I mean, Soderbergh knows how to work with great casts, so I'm definitely interested.
I probably will miss it in theaters, but it's something I definitely want to check out because I don't think he's done that kind of film before. He's done a lot of different genres, and you know, we like Soderbergh on this podcast. We've covered actually one of his films way long ago. We did one of the Ocean sequels.
It's always curious to see directors that we've covered on the film what they're releasing, or that we've covered on the show, see what they're releasing now. So I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Did you know he had a film that came out last year?
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I didn't watch it, but I saw that.
You're like, I know of it.
I know, yeah.
I saw Conclave recently.
Yeah.
That's been nominated for Best Picture. I'm a little surprised by that. I liked it. I didn't think it was anything great, but it's I'd say worth checking out. It's got a really good Ralph Fiennes performance. It's got a really good Stanley Tucci performance. John Lithgow is really good in it. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, so I was looking at the list of all Academy Award Academy Award nominees for Best Picture. Every major studio is represented, as well as some indie studios or like smaller studios, right? Like Anora's represented by a smaller studio. And then, of course, Netflix gets a nomination.
What was Netflix's movie?
I forget. Doesn't matter. They're not going to win.
You don't even know.
Doesn't matter. They're not going to win.
Well, by the time this episode comes out, the winners will be out. Your thing, Wicked, got nominated.
That's good old Warner Brothers. So
right. So what's the?
Oh wait, are they Universal? Maybe they're Universal.
Wicked?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. The first few minutes of this podcast is going to be us Googling stuff. It's Universal.
Yeah, so it's Universal. I really do think that the expansion to 10 nominations and growing past the 4 is just to appease the large studios.
I don't think it's been good for the category. Of course, first 15 or so years of the Academy Awards, there were 10 nominees for Best Picture. I don't think it was a good idea to go back to it. I don't know.
It probably was the same reason they're doing it now, was like, hey, like we got a lot of studios to appease.
I'm looking at the nominees. So I've seen Conclave now. I saw Dune Part 2. I have no interest in seeing any of these other films. I know you told me to watch Wicked. I'm sure I'll get around to it at some point. If you hadn't recommended it to me, I would have never been interested.
Yeah, I mean, Emilia Perez, that's getting a lot of flack in the media right now.
And it's funny you mention that, because knowing what I know about the film now, I have less than zero interest in it. But it's not like it would have ever been on my radar to begin with. It made no money. It lost money. I don't even. Yeah. Was it a streaming movie? No, it's a
Netflix's film is Emilia Perez.
Oh, it is. Okay, so it is a streaming movie. Okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of it until the Oscars controversy about it started. It wasn't on my radar at all. But I'm not really in the loop with a lot of new films anymore. So
yeah, I mean, There's also just one more film that we really haven't talked about was Nickel Boys.
Never heard of it.
It's Amazon's film that got nominated. It's one of those examples of, if you had to guess, when do you think it was released in released in theaters?
Like what month of the year?
Yeah,
Was it recently?
it was a December release, and like its budget was like $24 million, and it only made $2.6 million.
Did it get the Netflix treatment where they released it for like a week?
Yeah, and like
Okay.
for Oscars consideration, but it's like it's just so
Maybe it's good. Who knows? I don't know.
maybe I just don't know.
Historical drama.
It looks like all the right things to get nominated by the Academy Awards. Historical drama. It has some up and coming actors.
An abusive reform school in 1960s Florida. Ooh, the Oscars loves that.
Yeah, I don't know. But this is Amazon/MGM, so everyone has a chance to be represented at the Academy Awards.
That's nice. Well, the film that we're talking about today did not get nominated for any Academy Awards. This may shock you. We're talking today about Star Wars: The Clone Wars, not the TV show, the movie, because we don't do TV shows on this podcast. We just do movies. As more star systems get swept into the Clone Wars, the valiant Jedi Knights struggle to maintain order. Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan learner Ahsoka Tano embark on a mission that brings them face to face with Jabba the Hutt. Plotting against them is evil Count Dooku and his agent Asajj Ventress, who would ensure that the Jedis fail. Meanwhile, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi lead the clone army against the forces of the dark side. Released on August 15th, 2008 by Lucasfilm Animation, and Warner Brothers Pictures. Directed by Dave Filoni. Screenplay by Henry Gilroy, Steve Melchin, and Scott Murphy. Voiced by Matt Lanter, Ashley Eckstein, James Arnold Taylor, Catherine Tabor, Tom Kane, D. Bradley Baker, Ian Abercrombie, Christopher Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, and Anthony Daniels. The budget was $8.5 million. That is $12.4 million adjusted for inflation. And the box office was $68.3 million. That is $100 million adjusted for inflation. Anton, we haven't talked about a Star Wars movie in quite some time. I figured it was time we got back to the franchise, and I chose this film because even though it's a Star Wars film, this is one of the most obscure movies we've ever covered on the podcast because nobody remembers this and it confuses everyone.
If you're not a hardcore Star Wars fan, this really doesn't come top of mind. Also, it's confusing that it has the same name as a TV series and an animated short series.
It's part of the TV series, which is why it's not supposed to be confusing on their part. Although the short series you're talking about is called Star Wars Clone Wars. There's no the.
Right.
This has to be one of a kind for us. Like I said, obscure. I don't even know if a lot of Star Wars fans remember this film. Do you? I mean,
I've
seen very
seen it.
Forgettable.
Look, I've seen it because it's been on Cartoon Network, and it is very forgettable, but it is very important in the current Star Wars timeline.
Is it?
It introduces Ahsoka Tano, which has been a very popular character.
Did you see this in theaters?
I did not see this in theaters.
I didn't either.
And we haven't talked about this on the podcast, but the Clone Wars animated series does have its fan base. It was a thing for a bit, and it featured more and more of the lore from the Clone Wars series has been integrated into some of the extended Star Wars universe, particularly The Mandalorian. So there's a lot of similarities that you can see in this film with some of the continued storylines in The Mandalorian today. There's probably a lot of influence that you can get with the upcoming Mandalorian film that's coming into theaters. So I think that's kind of an interesting segue for this film, is planting the seeds for the future release of The Mandalorian.
Not intentionally, though.
Not intentionally, but I mean, small little green baby guy that reminds you of the other guy.
Rhoda the Hutt. I am a fan of the Clone Wars TV series. I don't think I've seen every episode, but I have seen at least 2/3 of it. It was on when I was in college. I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't think it's any kind of a masterpiece. And I say this as someone who, longtime listeners of the show at this point will know, I am not a fan of the prequel trilogy at all. The Clone Wars series, for me, it had the kind of long form storytelling and character development and character arcs that the prequel trilogy lacked. I don't care for Anakin Skywalker as a character in the prequels at all. He's certainly better written and better developed in that series.
I mean, even in this movie, he has way more emotional range.
Right. Which is, I think, quite sad for the prequels. The
Yeah, because
fact that this 90-minute animated film, which was basically a throwaway and an afterthought, in the words of George Lucas, that managed to do better things than 3 of his films did.
Yeah, it's sad. But at the same time, we can always appreciate the medium of animation and what it allows. And let's face it, it would have been way too expensive to do a full-on continuation series for Star Wars at the time. So if animation was the medium to do it, let's take it. We see a lot of examples now where Disney's still trying to figure out how to do a live action series. A lot of member berries if you're the Mandalorian. Try to do the Goonies in space if you're the Skeleton Crew. And they're still trying to figure it out.
I don't know what that is. Skeleton Crew.
Yep, it's Goonies in space. Just take my word for it.
Have you seen it at this point?
I tried. I didn't. I will watch it though. I promise.
Sure.
Yeah.
You let me know about that. Funny you said this film does have some relevancy in the overarching story of Star Wars, but I would say this film itself has no legacy whatsoever to speak of.
No. Again, if you're not a fan of the original of the Clone Wars series, you probably have never heard of this film, or you didn't even see it in theaters.
You and I have talked Star Wars quite a bit. A lot of the people in our lives that we know, you end up talking Star Wars with, right? Family
Absolutely.
members, friends. Have you ever had a conversation with anyone about this film?
No, not that I can recall. Yeah, even when I think about having conversations with people about this film, it's like just once, and it was literally to talk about not even this film. It was just, hey, there was the film, but let's talk about the Clone Wars series because of all the things they're interjecting that into The Mandalorian.
The only time I've actually had a conversation with anyone about this film is trying to get a guest to appear on this podcast, and inevitably everyone that I asked the same question, which was, "Oh, do you mean the show?" And I was like, "No, I mean the movie." And they're like, "What movie?" I'm like, "Well, there was a Clone Wars movie." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't think I saw it." And that's as far as the conversation goes. I don't even remember this being marketed. Like, I don't have a memory of this being in the theaters, and I was going to the theaters pretty frequently in the summer of 2008. The Dark Knight, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk. I saw Hancock in the theaters that summer. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I wasn't. It wasn't like fast forward to 2025 where I have like no knowledge of what's in theaters anymore. I was going to the movie theaters pretty regularly in 2008, and I don't remember this being on my radar at all. And that was someone who liked Star Wars.
Well, let's kind of think about it within the context of the time period. At that point, we still have not yet full commitment to a continuation of the series. And in terms of the marketing that's going on, it was basically the pilot to the Clone Wars, in which case it's more of a low budget series anyway. So in terms of any marketing budget, they weren't going to really invest in this film.
Did you have a similar experience where you're like, I don't even, this was in theaters? When? I don't remember this.
Oh, for sure. But like I said, I've seen this movie, but just because it was on, like, again, Cartoon Network or something.
I think that's probably where I saw it. Or on Netflix, the early days of Netflix streaming, which would have been that time, right, 2008. But I did start watching the Clone Wars series that fall when it debuted on Cartoon Network. I was invested in that at least. And then I didn't even realize this until years later, which was a baffling decision on the part of Lucasfilm. They released a bunch of those TV episodes out of order. Did you know that?
They did.
Why?
I don't know.
It's like poetry, rhymes. When I was developing the Star Wars films, I thought it would make sense to just start with 4, 5, and 6 because everyone else does 1, 2, and 3 first, and I know those numbers come first. But I said no way.
Yeah. Well, this was at a time when you still have more Lucas involved in the process, right? Again, there's still no commitment to the continuation of the series. We don't have yet the idea of putting in our man Adam Driver into the series.
This was technically George Lucas's final contribution to the franchise, right? Other than he may have been involved with random episodes of the series after this, but this would have
Right.
been it, right?
Yeah, this would have been it, and it I'll give it the fact that it feels like Star Wars, you know? And we'll kind of talk a bit more around what kind of plot we end up having for like a big film release in the theaters. But
Yeah.
yeah, but at the end of the day, there's just this very interesting angle that I don't think that there was any real interest from the studio of cashing in on this exorbitantly, other than being able to get some interest in the TV series, but they didn't want to fully commit.
I was very confused when I was doing the research and I saw Warner Brothers. I was like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Warner Brothers was involved in Star Wars. Yeah, this would have been their only involvement.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friends. I was interested in this film after the fact enough that I own the novelization.
Oh, chill.
Which
Do
is
they call him
quite
Stinky the Hut?
No, I don't appreciate your attitude towards this your cavalier attitude towards this. I am probably, which is quite sad, probably the only person that bought the novelization to this. This is probably a rare book. I have a first printing.
Oh, who wrote it?
Karen Travis.
So when you bought it, I think a signal went to her house of like someone knocked on her door. Someone's bought your book.
I don't want to undersell her too much. She's written a number of Star Wars novels. She is a number one New York Times best-selling author. And although this may be a rare first printing, it's worth about $4. So if anyone is interested, this can be yours for $4 on eBay. Actually, the novelization was quite helpful in preparing for this episode because it's better written than this film, I can tell you that.
Okay. Let's go. Should we go to the production history?
Yeah, let's do it. It's pretty short. This film was originally intended to serve as a standalone story, but also as a lead-in to the animated TV series of the same name, which debuted on Cartoon Network in October of 2008. It was going to be the first 4 episodes of the series. So basically the pilot, right?
It's so clear it was meant to be multiple episodes.
Yes. And it was going to be released prior to the series. I assume it would have just been like treated as a TV movie, right? They just would have released it all on one Friday or whatever. Would have been better. When viewing some of the completed footage, George Lucas got the idea to combine them into one big film and release it theatrically. He said, "This is so beautiful. Why don't we just go and use the crew and make a feature?" This decision that he somehow came to, it helped convince Warner Brothers' parent company, Time Warner, to distribute the movie and encourage its subsidiary Cartoon Network to air the series. Oh, that explains the Warner Brothers' involvement. They, of course,
that does.
Do they still own Cartoon Network?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucas later described the film as, quote, almost an afterthought, end quote. Yeah, no shit.
Almost.
The story of the kidnapped Hutt was inspired by the Sonny Chiba samurai film Shogun Shadow. Have you seen it?
That is so obscure because I have seen it. That is super, super obscure.
The film's animation style was designed to pay homage to the stylized looks of both Japanese anime and manga. I don't see any of that here at all. And the puppets of the 1960s TV series Thunderbirds. I can definitely see that.
I can see some anime aesthetic and not great, but just to kind of go back, you recognize Sonny Chiba, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I admittedly haven't seen a lot of his work, but of course I know who he is.
Yeah. Listeners, if you haven't seen his films internationally, of course, big Japanese star, action movie star from the late 60s and 70s, but you may also recall him being in Kill Bill.
Was he also in Tokyo Drift?
Yes, he was also in Tokyo Drift. He was the Yakuza grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah, my personal favorite Sonny Chiba performance, Tokyo Drift. Anton just
Excellent.
rolled his eyes. You're like,
Excellent.
okay, Pat. I'll just push the conversation forward. Lucasfilm Animation used Autodesk software to animate both the film and the series using the Maya 3D modeling program to create highly detailed worlds, characters, and creatures. Lucas also decided to create the animated film and series from a live action perspective, which producer Brian Winder said set it apart from other CGI films. Did they set it apart in terms of making it look shittier?
So everyone looks so rigid. Is that
Essentially, it quote meant using long camera shots, aggressive lighting techniques, and relying on editing instead of storyboards, end quote. At a Cartoon Network hosted discussion, Lucas said he did not want the Clone Wars film or television series to look like such movies as Beowulf. I assume he meant the then recent Robert Zemeckis version of Beowulf, because he wanted a stylized look rather than a realistic one. He also felt it should not look like the popular Pixar movies such as The Incredibles and Cars, because he wanted the film and the characters to have its own unique style. Well, he didn't have to worry about that because they didn't have the budget for this to look anything remotely like a Pixar film. So I would say he achieved his goal with that. Samuel L. Jackson, Christopher Lee, Anthony Daniels, and Matthew Wood reprised their respective vocal roles as Mace Windu, Count Dooku, C-3PO, and the B-1 battle droids. However, Jackson and Lee did not reprise their roles in the television series. The film was poorly received upon release. It ended up being quite profitable, mostly because of its low budget. But Anton, this has a 19% Rotten Tomatoes score, making it the worst reviewed of any Star Wars film.
that hurts?
Yeah,
That is
it's harsh.
that is
It's
that is
harsh.
harsh.
Yeah,
That is harsh.
yeah. When I see 19%, that usually you think like this is going to be all-time disaster level bad.
And I'll say it now. I don't think it was that bad.
No,
I think
no,
I think
no.
that's
Yeah,
I think
certainly
that's
not.
harsh.
No, no, definitely harsh.
I've seen much worse.
I'm gonna say it now, Anton. I like this movie better than any of the prequels.
Yeah. And that really hurts to say.
Yeah. Now, would I rather watch this over any of the prequels? Again, I don't
Some
know.
of them.
Maybe. Let's talk about why wasn't it better. Number one reason, and this may be the only time we use this reason in the entirety for the rest of this podcast. Number one reason, this is not a movie.
Yeah, like structurally this is a TV show pilot.
Right.
And
Literally, it
multiple
literally
episodes.
is that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can see where it's planting those seeds for continued storylines throughout the series. It is not a standalone film that really feels like a movie. It really does feel like a TV show.
It is technically a movie, and that's why we're covering it. They released it in theaters as a movie, but yeah, it is not a movie. This is another just really puzzling decision from George Lucas. Like, what made him think this would make a good theater release?
Other than the fact that I could see it as like an opportunity to make some money, just because it's like, hey, like this is long enough to be a movie. Why don't we release it? It's like that could be the only reason that I could see. But in terms of its structure, again, it just really does feel like a TV series. Like you can kind of feel when a commercial break could come on.
Yes. We'll talk about the production quality of this too. And it definitely doesn't feel like a big screen movie. I have to wonder about this, about how much Warner Brothers really believed in this and whether this was just another case of just them not wanting to tell George Lucas no. Howard Rothman, the president of Lucas Licensing, he said regarding the decision, quote, "Sometimes George works in strange ways," end quote. That's another way of saying he completely screwed this up. You know what it reminded me of? You know when you're watching an NBA game, and I'm talking, this mostly happens in the playoffs, and it used to happen more with Jeff Van Gundy. You know where he would say stuff about like, I'm confused by why fill in the blank coach is bringing this player into the game.
Oh,
Which is another way of saying like, what the hell is he doing? This is what this reminds me of. And I like, think about it. Like if you take the Star Wars part out of this, and I think you're right. They thought it would make a lot of money, but take the Star Wars part out of that for a second and substitute that with any other show. Why would you expect that to work? Like, think of any show, animated or live action. Like, oh, let's take the 4 first episodes of Modern Family and release it as a movie. Why would that
Well,
work?
there's a bit of a practice already with foreign animated films of let's splice together multiple movies to make one movie. Let's take other properties and splice it up to even make a TV series. That's what they do with like Power Rangers, again another foreign product. I think that general practice was adapted a bit here of we can take the sum of its parts and make a movie. And I mean, you look at the math, like it did make some money, not a ton of money, but it made some money. So I don't think that's something that you should do with a beloved franchise.
I don't know how much they threw at this in terms of the promotion, but both of us agree we didn't even remember this being in theaters. I remembered learning about it that fall when the TV show was starting. Someone told me at college, like, oh yeah, there was this movie that was released in the summer. And I was like, huh? It was one of those deals. Producer Catherine Winder, I don't know why I said Brian earlier. Her name's definitely not Brian. It's definitely Catherine. Sorry, Catherine.
Yeah.
She said the sudden decision to do this added an already large challenge of establishing a show, quote, of this sophistication and complexity, end quote. But she did admit she thought it was a good way to start the series. I don't see how this is a good way to start the series.
No, because the lack of marketing, again, that we've talked about to really drum up any excitement for it, doesn't set up the series well. Even then, TV series at that point, you're also going up against a lot of content saturation. So an animated series to not quite beloved prequel series is going to be a hard, tough sell.
A profitable prequel series, though, right? I mean, they made a ton of money.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. But problems, they didn't really market it well. Nobody really saw it in the theaters. And like we talked about before, so many people were confused by it. Even at the time, it's even more confusing now. And it took a while to explain it to people then. And like I was talking about, when I was trying to see which guests wanted to appear on this episode, all of them were confused by it. They all asked the same thing. I'll repeat it because it is worth repeating. They all asked, "Oh, you mean the show?" And I'm like, "No, the movie." And then you have to take 30 seconds to explain what the movie is. It's just a failure any way you want to slice it.
Yeah, what I do remember from when I was younger is hearing about the Clone Wars series. And what I remember about that was my disappointment that it wasn't going to be the traditional series animation of Star Wars Clone Wars.
The Tartakovsky one?
Yeah. I really wanted that.
Which is spectacular.
I really wanted more of that.
And funny you bring up the Tartakovsky one. That whole series actually ends up just being a 2-hour movie. Because it's a bunch of like 10-minute episodes that work out to be a really, really digestible, watchable 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Because it was a limited series, right? It was never intended to be this long thing. So Lucas made the decision, we're going to turn this into a movie and release it in theaters. They didn't give it the budget of a real movie. $8 million? That's the budget of an indie movie in 2008.
And it just kind of shows you what the studio really believed in for this movie, or even just like this as a pilot, basically. It's a very expensive pilot. Maybe give it that.
Yes, I'll give it that. I also think it reveals something that you and I have talked about before, which is George Lucas does not know what he's doing. And I say this, look, I respect George Lucas. We have a lot of love for George Lucas on this podcast. I asked this question of you probably on the Phantom Menace episode way back when. Is he a good director?
He is, when in very specific cases.
I think you're being polite. I think it's a pretty easy no.
Dude,
he didn't even direct this, so it's like you can't blame him for this.
But like you can blame him for this definitely being made.
You can. In this format, yes.
Yeah.
You were starting to get into this earlier. It has the pacing of a TV show, the dialogue of a TV show, the exposition of a TV show, the character development of the TV show, which ultimately ends up being, I think, a positive, right?
Yeah, and I think...
Well, the character development, not the other things I was talking about.
I was going to say the character development, it was slight, right? You don't really get full arcs, but you get enough of a hint like, oh, Ahsoka Tano's character is starting to learn like I can't just be young and brash, and that actually sets her up really well for the rest of the series, right? Because watching that series, it's how she develops into a full-on Jedi Knight.
Yeah, I did like how she's just thrown into the action on Christophsis, and she
Yeah,
has to
and
learn on the fly, and Anakin has to learn on the fly with her because he's never been put in this situation where he's being asked to mentor someone.
is this the most likable Anakin Skywalker?
In the whole series, you mean?
Yeah,
I mean, that's tough for me to answer because he's had some really great character arts throughout the animated series.
I was gonna say like that's the tough part is like the only you really love him in the anything animated, but otherwise Anakin's not a great character in live action, which is a travesty. But like that's the thing with this film. It's like if you've never seen, or if people are curious to see like the range of character that Anakin Skywalker is, and what is the tragedy of his fall, it's like it's because you get a character like this, someone that shows nuance and someone that shows a range of emotion and likability and would train someone like Ahsoka Tano.
And I don't think any of that character development was shown in episodes 2 or 3.
No, because there was no way that it could have been shown, right?
Well, they could have if a real screenwriter had actually worked on the film.
That's fair. But like let's also be fair about this. The full depth that we've ever truly gotten to like a wider Star Wars series has been through the animated series.
Yeah, for sure. By the
And
way,
like
I don't think we're in the minority on this. I think a lot of Star Wars fans would agree with this that the Clone Wars TV series had far superior storytelling to the prequels.
yeah, and I think you're right. You're totally right. It does come down to screenwriting and an investment in that character development. And you can only show so much in the medium of film versus TV. But even then, the fact that this film had that much more character development, and I'm talking about the positive, that was impressive for me.
Part of the problem for me with this film is I almost wish it were worse because bear with me for a second because I know that
Sure.
that's going to sound weird. Okay, so it's the first 4 episodes of the Clone Wars. If I'm thinking about the story arcs that I saw throughout the, entire tenure of the Clone Wars, this is like I would say this is an okay story arc with
Mm-hmm.
Jabba the Hutt's son getting kidnapped. It's fine. It feels very episodic because it's supposed to be very episodic. And so what I meant when I said I wish it were worse is because I just think it's okay. I don't really have a strong opinion on this film's story. It's very easy for me to talk about the prequels and how much I dislike them because I think the storytelling is so obviously horrible and there's such easy tangible examples to cite. Whereas this, okay, it's a pilot to a series that I liked, and the story that they're showing and trying to pass off. This is basically impersonating a film. It's fine. But as a theatrical film, it just doesn't do a lot for me.
No, it just doesn't. I think that's really well said. It's not despite all the praises I've given as well, there's a lot to look at to see where the lower budget for a big budget pilot really shows. I think the animation, of course, suffered the most.
Oh yeah, we I have a whole section about
Yeah, we
the
have a whole
animation. Yeah,
yeah.
it's clunky. Is the probably the best way to describe it. Yeah, you know what? Jogging my memory on this, it's almost like they messed up and they forgot to promote this film because if you remember, the TV series was promoted heavily.
Yep.
Prior to this, the last piece of Star Wars medium that we had gotten was, of course, Revenge of the Sith in 2005. Which a lot of people think is the best of the prequels. I don't. I think I'm in the minority on that. I don't care for that film at all. So for me, the prequels ended on a pretty low note. But
Right.
I remember seeing the trailers for the upcoming series. I guess some of the trailers would have included the footage that you actually see in this film. And George Lucas himself was promoting the series quite heavily. And I remember there being a lot of hype for it. Because I remember being excited by the animation aspect of it. Because, if you want to go back around the same time, no, I think it was a little bit later. Do you remember George Lucas was trying to get a live action series made?
Right, right. I remember
Would
that.
that have been after this? I think.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm all right. I'm screwing up my timeline a little bit, but the point that I'm making is that there was a lot of hype for the TV series, which came out in October of 2008, and then this thing came out in August without much fanfare. And when I heard about it shortly before the TV series started, it just confused me.
Again, the title probably didn't help.
No, no. The only real differentiator here is Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Lee,
I mean,
dubbing over their TV replacements.
Christopher Lee being in the film was a really nice treat,
It
especially
was.
since he was featured so heavily. Samuel L. was not quite so
Not
much
in
in the
it,
film.
no. But you're right about Christopher Lee because I always thought Dooku was the most interesting character of the prequel trilogy era. Remember how on when we talked about Attack of the Clones, we lamented like we both of us wished that his character had been in Phantom Menace because
Yeah.
the whole concept of him, the fallen Jedi who becomes a Sith Lord, he's in some ways he's the precursor to Anakin.
Oh yeah, he's so much more compelling as a villain.
Right.
And you get a bit of that in this film with how compelling he is and how capable and cunning he is as a villain.
The novelization goes into more detail about his motivations for joining Sidious. It's really interesting, and it's not really shown here. But the rest of the Clone Wars series does go into Dooku's motivations a little bit deeper, and yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
again, I think he's the most interesting character of the whole series.
Certainly it's a great hint for the kind of character development and behind the scenes that you get with the rest of the Clone Wars series, and it's definitely a plus for it. So that's nice. But I think the very big elephant in the room is the actual plot of the film. It's a big rescue mission
Of Jabba's son, right?
Yep, Rada
Rhoda
the Hutt.
right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because while I think the plot of them trying to rescue Jabba's son works fine for this film, as far as I know, he's never brought up again for the rest of the Clone Wars series, is he?
But the memes about him are hilarious, especially when it comes to the speculation of him being in the next Mandalorian film. So let's call it now, folks. Like the Mandalorian film's going to come out. Are we going to get Rada back? Who knows?
That's just fan fiction as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. But it's just so it definitely is just hilarious how much that really does reflect a future strategy by Disney of why don't we make a baby version of a character?
I'm not surprised by that though, because what has Disney done since they bought the IP? They've looked and they were like, how can we recycle ideas?
Yeah, and I hinted on this a bit earlier. So many concepts from the Clone Wars, from the animated series, has been interjected, whether it's more of the lore around Mandalore, more development around other characters in the series of The Mandalorian, even the Hutts and like greater understanding of like Tatooine politics, which is mind-boggling. But I find that I find it fascinating that this film still stands a test of time in terms of its influence, and especially with not just Rada, he's little stinky man himself, but also with Ahsoka Tano, who I think is probably the most important introduction.
Yes, agree with you on that. By the way, I think the politics of the Hutts is pretty interesting. How it's like this crime family.
Oh my god, it's
Again,
insane.
the novelization goes into more detail on that. You actually might enjoy it.
It's interesting how powerful they are. They basically
Right.
own the Panama Canal.
Right. And they're so powerful. I don't know if one of the spin-off expanded universe novels goes into this, but even after Palpatine founds the Empire, he still doesn't really mess with them.
Right. And like that says a lot.
As far as I know, the Empire doesn't really. They're on Tatooine, of course, but they don't. The Hutts are still in power.
Right. And like I don't know if that has to do with just like there's an agreed upon treaty with the Hutts, or there's some long-standing power that the Hutts have that like the Empire just cannot access.
Palpatine's smart. You know my theory
Yeah.
on this. Was Palpatine really the bad guy?
Trying to
I don't know.
we've talked about
Yeah,
this,
I mean,
but
the Jedi kind of suck. They're not very intelligent. They make a lot of dumb decisions. They're definitely corrupt. It's funny if you read Dooku's like manifesto about like his why he has problems with the Republic and why he left the Jedi. Everything he says is right.
well, this is also kind of the. I talked about how much I had a lot of displeasure with the most recent Star Wars series.
Which one was that?
It
That was a
was
Vegas Vacation, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was what was the show? It was really bad.
It's not even really
um
Star Wars though. Like you're
the
just
Acolyte.
you're describing it as Star
Yeah.
Wars. That's not Star Wars.
Yeah, so but it reflected what you were talking about how the Jedi actually are very corrupt and kind of suck. And poor execution of the show. But it's funny how the series and writers are still trying to reflect very good points, even like that you'd agree with. But the way the direction of the series has gone has just been very poor execution.
I admire you for even trying to watch that.
I mean, it's because it is something that I enjoy, right? I
You
do
enjoyed
enjoy
it?
Star Wars.
Really?
I mean,
You enjoyed that?
I enjoy Star Wars.
You enjoyed that
And
show?
no, I really didn't enjoy
Okay,
that show.
I didn't think
Yeah.
so. You enjoyed
Uh,
the sequel trilogy?
no, I did not.
Okay.
But
You
I like the
enjoyed
Mandalorian.
you enjoyed the prequels?
No, but I like Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2.
We're coming up on a fairly low batting average here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with the Mandalorian film. I really don't.
Do you have high hopes?
No, to be the realist, no. I was also a bit disappointed by the Book of Boba Fett. Talk about a character that's been maligned.
That was I saw the whole thing, the Book of Boba Fett.
I wonder if it's total aside, but I wonder if it's because each episode is directed by someone else.
I'm sure it didn't help. My fundamental problem with it is probably something a lot of people would disagree with. I never found him to be that interesting of a character. He was a bit character in Return of the Jedi. He died in Return of the Jedi. He died. Because that's another thing with this series. And if you want to get into the Clone Wars thing, I didn't like that they brought back Darth Maul. Like, no, that guy died. He died in The Phantom Menace.
I forget why he even came back. Is it just something in his religion that just let it happen?
I think they just wanted to bring him back because they thought he was cool.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, how do they reason it in the universe that, like,
didn't his brother find him?
And like you can just reanimate off of like a corpse like that?
I mean, they brought back Palpatine, who died.
Which again, they don't explain how it happened.
We're getting a little off track, but like we're hitting on the same points. So it's just like that's my pet peeve in any series, not just Star Wars. It's like no, that guy died.
Well, that's the thing with now. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole with Boba Fett. It makes sense to me that he would survive for a time period, considering he had on the Beskar armor.
Sure,
so that's not going to and you already know that the digestion period of a Sarlacc pit would take like years.
But he just
unless he died,
he just wasn't that important of a character.
Right. His popularity is more around his mystery and aesthetic.
Yeah. I think he personally worked better as the less you know about. Remember, he's not even named in The Empire Strikes Back. He's just called Bounty Hunter.
Right. And like again, that's why everyone was so studio was so shocked by his popularity because of what you said. The more mysterious he was, the more popular he was.
It's kind of like, how you can go on Wikipedia and every single thing that ever existed in Star Wars has its own page. I think that's another part of the problem with what happened to Star Wars. It's like not everything needs to be explained.
That's the fanaticism, man. And like
they took it too far. Like I'll give you a different franchise from Lord of the Rings. The Watcher in the water. Nobody knows what that thing is, and that's what makes it such an interesting monster. It's some kind of kraken thing. Is it related to Sauron? Nobody knows, but I don't want to know any more about it. You know what I mean? Like that's my point. I don't want to know any more about that. And it's a lot of the same thing with these Star Wars characters. I don't need to know that the Dianoga, the monster that's in the trash compactor in the first Death Star, I don't need to know that that's a force-sensitive creature because that's how it's described in the Wikipedia article. I'm not making this up.
And look, I think that your preference that's totally valid.
This is
I
just
think
me. You're
that
right. It's just
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
my opinion on it.
Your preference is very valid. I think the reality is there are thousands of people that want to know it's a force sensitive creature,
I don't envy
and
them.
they will eat it up,
I don't envy them.
just like they'll eat up Star Wars, the Clone Wars film.
But you know who? You know what I want, Anton. I want Newt.
Revisit that whole race, please.
Yeah, the Nemoidians. Impossible. Nothing can get through our shields. And then the memes about they've gone up the ventilation shaft.
Yep, it's real
It's
good.
great stuff. There's no Nemoidians in this film, right?
Nope,
No,
no
that's a
Nemoidians.
shame. Could have improved it. Yeah. So I have no idea what we were talking about. Oh yeah. Jabba the Hutt's son never appears again in the animated series.
But like, it's just hilarious. I find it so funny that they just have this like little squeaky character as what's bringing together like, or as what's bringing together Ahsoka Tano and Anakin. But again, for the most part, it just being a rescue mission, it's like that's what they're hinging upon. Like this release for like a Star Wars film, it's just a little insulting.
A little bit. Like when they have to climb up the mountain instead of just like landing on it.
Yeah,
What was it? A monastery, right?
yeah, it was a monastery. I mean,
That's where the
oh,
airbenders live, right?
talk about like hilarious. I don't know if you noticed this. If you watch the background characters in any scene, I don't know how much care and attention was put into what they're doing. Sometimes you'll just see random characters crouch for no reason, or like even during the monastery scene when they're done taking out the droids, you just see a bunch of clone troopers just like kicking random droids that have already been torn apart. It's just really funny.
Based on what we're about to talk about in the next reason, which is the animation, I don't think a lot of care was put into those characters.
But like, if I can find some clips, like I was bursting out laughing just watching just random droids getting kicked.
It's like a PS2 AI.
Yeah, PS2 AI cutscene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next reason why this wasn't better, the animation. This film was heavily criticized for the quality of its animation. I just want to read you a couple quotes from some critics, starting with Roger Ebert. Quote, "The characters have hair that looks molded from Play-Doh, bodies that seem arthritic, and moving lips on half-frozen faces, all signs that shortcuts were taken in the animation work." And Carrie Rickey of the Philadelphia Inquirer said, quote, "Characters move as you would imagine the statues at a waxwork might," end quote. All of that is fair.
Yep.
And that's probably the biggest detriment of this film is that this is laughable for a theatrical release film.
I mean, it's laughable. The stylization is just not my cup of tea. I don't think it's a lot of people's cup of tea, but it's also that same direction that a lot of traditional animation went in. It's cheaper just to do 3D animation, but I think it's the execution of it. It just does not look good.
There are a bunch of shots that to me don't even look finished, like they were a proof of concept or something. That's what I meant earlier when I said I was confused. Like, what did Lucas look at where he was just like, yeah, this looks great, let's just put this in theaters? Like, all of it is wooden and clunky and mechanical, and
Yeah,
it,
you can see the inspiration from Star Wars Clone Wars. You can but you can't see it in how rigid the rest of either the movement looks, how hollow a lot of the movement looks. It has not aged well.
it didn't age at the time either, because you think
Mhm.
about the contemporaries. Lucas himself talked about, like, well, we didn't want this to look like Pixar.
Really? It's just so
Pixar
funny.
movies were like $100 million budgets at that time. You think about what else was 3D animation looking like in 2008. Pixar had been around a long time by this point. Disney was doing CG animation for a while by this point. DreamWorks was probably at their height, right? With the Shrek series and Kung Fu Panda
Right.
started that same year. The Clone Wars can't hold a candle to any of that stuff.
Seriously.
Just, again, more evidence George Lucas does not know what he's doing. I want to give some credit to some of the things in this film, though. As with a lot of the Star Wars stuff, including the prequel trilogy, the production design, like the design of a lot of what you see, I think is really creative. Christophsis is a really cool looking planet.
Yeah. And I think So you'd agree, like a bit of the ideation of the world building
Yeah.
definitely has its merit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They always put a lot of thought into this. And as much as I don't like the prequel trilogy, the character design is cool. The ship design is cool, right? Like the
Yeah,
world
yeah,
building that they're doing is very good.
yeah. Give me Geonosis. I want it.
Right. I mean the Geonosians, I don't know if they look cool, but, but there's exceptions, you know.
No offense to any Geonosian listeners.
How dare you talk about Poggle the Lesser? Slander. Even the Nemoidians, I mean, I enjoy them, you know?
Yeah.
As you Queen Amidala herself, at last you come before us, your highness.
Did we need more Obi-Wan in this movie?
Probably. I do like the Ahsoka stuff, though. I mean, they hadn't quite
Yeah.
figured her character out yet, obviously, because she was brand new, and she would really become a great character over the course of the series. I still don't think she fits into Revenge of the Sith at all, and because she didn't and never did and was never supposed to.
Mhm.
But that's no fault of this film or this series.
No, but it's also just very funny then when you look at the movie poster and Obi-Wan's like front and center.
I mean, he gets his stuff to do for sure. I mean, he gets to fight Ventress.
Yeah, and I think like probably marketing wise it makes sense, like draw people in because of it's Obi-Wan. But yeah, I think that having Ahsoka Tano is probably one of the coolest things about this movie. Yeah, and I really do love her character development.
What is she supposed to be? 12, 14?
Yeah, just like whatever a Padawan youngling is supposed to be. So like 12 makes sense.
Right. Not young enough to get slaughtered by Anakin in The Revenge of the Sith.
Because those aren't Padawans.
No, they're
Those
just
are just those are
younglings.
they're just younglings.
Yeah. Still not sure how he was able to redeem himself later for murdering children, but you know,
Yeah.
to be angry is to be human. Just remember that, Anton. Yeah, I mean, you know, better character development in this film. The comments that he's making to Ahsoka about how much he hates the Hutts because they own slaves. Remember, you know, she's not sure. She doesn't know anything about his past, so
Right.
she's not really sure why he's so angry about it. It's good writing.
It's good writing because it's grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Right. It's not. Would you agree that the dialogue in this film is like way less soap operatic compared to the prequel trilogy?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And it just feels real. And I feel like that's what's needed.
Yeah, I mean, or like the part where he distrusts the replacement for R2D2. You know, like stuff like that. It's all good character bits.
Yeah. It says a lot more about them as characters and just how they can develop versus without saying it. Oh, and also I just completely forgot to mention the way that this film opens up with a hardcore narration.
Yeah, yeah. It's clunky.
It's the opening of the Clone Wars, people.
Yes. Shout out to the 2003 animated series by Gennady Tartarovsky.
It was very jarring, but at the same time, it just screamed, this is an animated kid show that probably should have been direct to TV.
Probably, yeah, just a bit. Think about it. Even though it made good money, if they had to split that with the theaters, it didn't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
30 million,
I mean,
maybe.
I'm sure it didn't make as much as George Lucas thought it would make. And this is probably one of those lessons he had to learn of you can't just put Star Wars in something and people are absolutely going to like go to the theaters. And
if he hadn't sold to Disney, like no one would have been legally allowed to take the car keys from him. But
yeah.
have you read about the development of the ill-fated live-action series that he was trying to develop?
Oh, what ended up happening?
I'm not an expert on everything, but basically he was trying to get Fox to pay for everything, but he wouldn't give them any creative control. And they actually ended up telling him no. They're like, we're not doing this. Like, we need to have some say in like what goes on the screen. And he just didn't want to do it, but he didn't want to put up any money.
Smart move by Fox. And I guess smart move by Disney saying, hey, you give up everything if you sell this to us.
I think he regrets it.
I mean, he definitely does. I mean, we've seen as much in interviews, like he misses being a part of it.
He is such a strange legacy in terms of like what did he want? because it always seemed like he did the prequels reluctantly, right? And then cause remember he had the self-imposed deadline. He told Fox, "I don't want to work on these after 2005." So they even started filming Revenge of the Sith without a completed script, and that was all on him. It's just stuff like that. How passionate about this was he? I don't know. He's a very hard guy to figure out.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked if like money is a big factor for him and just wanting to make more money. So
It's probably why he sold out. It's not like he needed the money, but so if you're breaking it down, right? If you're Disney now in 2025, you don't regret buying Star Wars, right? It's made
no,
billions and billions of dollars.
they're doing with Star Wars what George Lucas would have always wanted to do, which is franchise effectively.
Theme park,
Theme park, hotel and cruise experiences.
failed hotel.
Yeah, failed hotel. um what is it, like every single toy line, re-releasing old toy lines, everything that Disney does great with, again, merchandising and then releasing content, which, you know, they haven't quite figured out Star Wars yet.
I actually think they will fix it. No,
With The Mandalorian?
no, there'll be something else. Now the question is, will they fix it with something that interests someone like me at this point? I doubt it, but I have no doubt that it will end up in good hands eventually. Somewhere, someone along the line will rescue it in the eyes of
In
the
a
fans.
in a galaxy far, far away?
Well, they could use my idea. I've been
The
saying this for
Nemoidians?
years. Why don't you just remake the prequels? They're shitty movies. They're poorly written, poorly acted, poorly paced movies. I don't believe anyone who says they love them. I don't know what
And
they're waiting for. They wanted to remake A New Hope with Force Awakens, but they didn't have the balls to do it. So they gave us
yeah,
this half-assed remake, right? It was like a
it's
retread,
been
remake, homage. Just remake the prequels. What are they waiting for?
the longer they continue to wait, the more any reference to the sequel series just seems more and more dated. Like when we were in Disneyland recently, the whole Batu area is really, really cool. Like I really, really enjoy it. It's an awesome experience. You can see the whole Millennium Falcon. So again, stuff that references the original
Right,
series.
right. Oh, Batu, you mean another planet that they just
Yeah.
based it on? Yeah.
Yeah. When you see things like, oh, that's Kylo Ren's character, you're reminded they have Kylo Ren here, but they're never ever referencing him again. Like they've completely moved away from this. That's a bit disappointing.
I don't know why they're afraid to retcon that, right? They've retconned the entire expanded universe. What's stopping them from just saying the prequel trilogy never happened? We're wiping the slate clean.
I mean,
Plenty of franchises do this. Look what Halloween
yeah,
did. Halloween did that a
yeah,
couple
there's
times.
I honestly think it's because they really are thinking about it and like kind of the stakes of it, and I do respect it because it's like you don't want to take it lightly. You don't want to just take this beloved franchise and splice up 4 episodes of a pilot and turn it into an animated movie. In the same sense, there's a lot of implications if you remake the prequel trilogy, even if they weren't the best films of all time.
I don't know what they're waiting for. I really don't.
They're literally just treading water right now with the IP. It's every series is just we're sticking around this same time period, which is right before A New Hope. Like it literally is the same time period. Either you're right before A New Hope or you're so far away from a time period anything happening in the series is in a vacuum and has no implication or impact on the current series. So
And
they're treading water.
they have no plan to end it or really
Yeah.
conclude it. Like we talked about with the Mandalorian. It's like, okay, how are they going to end that?
Yeah, and like that's what I'm really curious about too. With the more you think about it, especially with like A New Hope, you can't have fresh ideas. Or sorry, with the Mandalorian film, you can't really have fresh ideas. We know what it all leads to. You still get to Force Awakens.
I don't have anything else to talk about with this film, The Clone Wars. Do you?
Not really. I'm ready for us to move on. I hope to see you in the next Mandalorian film, Rod of the Hutt.
You want to go first then?
Yeah. For a TV pilot, this is not a bad pilot. For a film, it's not a great film. It does not have very good animation. I think that stylistically, it's not my cup of tea, but I feel that it evolved itself over time in the Clone Wars TV series and fit much more nicely as a TV series. And that's why this is nothing more than a glorified TV pilot. Now, with that, there are a lot of benefits. We've already talked about the introduction of a very ever popular Ahsoka Tano. I think that the development in her character and overall her interactions with Anakin are some of the most sincere and most riveting character interactions that we got more than any of the trilogy films. And I think that has something to say with the writing in this. And I think that definitely deserves its merit. Now, flimsy plot notwithstanding, I think that it really is just lending itself to the fact that it is more of a lead into the TV series. There's really no going around it. But the fact that we had a full on film release for it without much fanfare is just so unique. It's just something that really presents itself as those moments in history where you kind of scratch your head. So I don't think it deserves such a low Rotten Tomato score. I think it's actually like pretty decent. I just don't think that it's anything. I just don't think that it's necessarily a home run in the park. It's more of like a single. So I give this actually like a C plus. Like I'd see myself watching this again and then going to watch the Clone Wars series.
Really? You'd watch this again?
Yeah, just to get into the series.
Okay, interesting. So for me, echoing a lot of what you said, is it a functional pilot for the Clone Wars series? Yeah, sure. But we're judging this as a film because they made the decision, however boneheaded it may have been on George Lucas's part, to release this in theaters as a film. The decision to stitch together 4 episodes and put it in theaters was a mistake. And I think as a film, it's pretty bad. I think the animation for a 2008 theatrical release is downright terrible. The pacing is uneven because it's paced just like you would see on the show, which means it's awkward to watch this as a film. I was trying to put myself in the shoes of if I had seen this in theaters in 2008, it probably wouldn't even been stranger. And this was the first Star Wars movie that we had gotten since episode 3. So there's really no way for me to say this isn't a clunker. Now, that being said, there's nothing offensive in it. There's nothing egregious in it. It doesn't have any of the things that I think brought the prequels down for me, which was just like terrible acting and soap opera level dialogue. Nothing like that, you know what I mean? There's nothing in it that I outright dislike. I think it's watchable, if somewhat boring. There's probably no real time that I'm ever going to rewatch this. George Lucas himself described this as, quote, almost an afterthought, end quote, and that's exactly what it is. I think apart from setting up some characters who I like Ahsoka, this has little real meaning into the bigger story that is Star Wars. So I'm going to go much lower than you, a full letter grade, and give this a D+. Again, it's not terrible, but it's a clunker for me as a film. If they had avoided putting this in theaters altogether, well, first of all, we wouldn't even be talking about it right now. And second of all, it would just be thought of as a nice way to introduce the show.
Yeah, well, there we are. There we are, folks.
That is it for Star Wars: The Clone Wars. You can find it on Disney Plus if you're interested. I can't recommend it unless you really, really like Star Wars and you've got 90 minutes to kill. Next week's episode, Anton, is going to be Police Story 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, that'll be out a couple days after this. Because I think what I'd like to do is release this on May the 4th and just see what happens when we release a Star Wars episode on May the 4th. Maybe it'll do well.
Well, may the 4th be with all of you then.
Yeah, to get through this, you need it. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a follow and a 5-star review. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. We have various levels of subscription there. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if anyone would like to support us directly, we have a Patreon. Links to everything mentioned are in the episode's description. Thanks for listening and see you next time.